Hi everybody, today is July 30th, 2013. Bradley Manning found not guilty of aiding the enemy. An Army judge on Tuesday acquitted Private Bradley Manning of aiding the enemy by disclosing a trove of secret U.S. government documents, a striking rebuke to military prosecutors who argued that the largest leak in U.S. history had assisted al-Qaeda. The judge, Colonel Dennis Lind, found Manning guilty of most of more than 20 crimes he was charged with. She also acquitted him of one count of the Espionage Act that stemmed from his leak of a video that depicted a fatal U.S. military airstrike in Farah, Afghanistan. The 8-week trial offered a gripping account of Manning's transformation from a shy soldier who deployed to Baghdad as an intelligence analyst in 2009 to a mole for the anti-secrecy group WikiLeaks, which disclosed more than 700,000 documents Manning gathered. Had Manning been convicted of aiding the enemy, Manning would have faced a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole. Civil libertarians saw the prospect of a conviction on that charge, which has not been used since the Civil War, as a dangerous precedent that would have sent an unmistakable message to would-be government whistleblowers. The heart of this matter is the level of culpability, said retired Air Force Colonel Morris Davis, a former chief prosecutor at the U.S. military prison in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. He noted that Manning had already pled guilty to some of the charges and admitted leaking secret documents that he felt exposed wartime misdeeds. Beyond that is government overreach. If found guilty of all charges, including aiding the enemy, Manning would face a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. The planned announcement of the verdict follows an 8-week trial at Fort Meade in Maryland, where military prosecutors argued that Manning, 25, betrayed his oath and his country and assisted al-Qaeda because the terrorist group was able to access secret material once WikiLeaks posted it. Hours before the verdict, about 24 Manning supporters demonstrated outside Fort Meade wearing Truth t-shirts and waving signs proclaiming their admiration for the former intelligence analyst, the Associated Press reported. He wasn't trying to aid the enemy, said Barbara Bridges, 43, of Baltimore. He was trying to give people the information they needed so they could hold their government accountable. You know, if a government does things in the name of its citizens, in secret, and many things that the citizens do not want the government to do, then it is not a government of the people. As dozens of journalists were admitted to the installation amid tight security, dogs trained to sniff out explosives searched their vehicles before they were escorted to a media room where the court proceedings were to be broadcast live on a screen. The government pursuit of the charge of aiding the enemy under a theory that had not been used since the Civil War troubled civil libertarians and press freedom advocates. They said the publication of secret defense information online could expose any leaker to life in prison and will chill press scrutiny of the military. The government relied on a case from the Civil War to bring the charges. In that trial, a Union Army private, Henry Vanderwater, was found guilty of aiding the enemy when he leaked a Union roster to the Alexandrian newspaper. Vanderwater received a sentence of 3 months hard labor and was dishonorably discharged. Manning had pled guilty to a number of lesser charges, including unauthorized possession of information relating to the national defense. The sentencing phase of the trial at Fort Meade outside Baltimore would begin Wednesday if Manning is convicted. If there is a conviction, the prosecution is expected to press the judge, Colonel Dennis Lind, to impose the maximum sentence. The government would present in its closed session of the court the classified damage assessment conducted by government agencies after the disclosures by WikiLeaks. Defense attorney David Coombs would also be able to offer mitigation evidence about Manning's motives and his state of mind when he turned the material over to the group. Manning would be likely to serve any sentence at the U.S. disciplinary barracks at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Manning of Crescent, Oklahoma, enlisted in the Army October 2007, hoping to fund his college education through the GI Bill. He trained as an all-source intelligence analyst at Fort Huachuca, Arizona, and was stationed at Fort Drum, New York. The military said Manning's service was troubled from the start. He took more time than usual to pass basic training and struggled to connect with fellow soldiers. In October of 2009, Manning's unit was deployed to Iraq, where as a part of his assignment, he was able to access classified networks containing military and diplomatic documents. In a closing argument last week, Major Ashton Fenn, a military prosecutor, said Manning had disregarded the sensitivity of the material he leaked and decided to release it to a bunch of anti-government activists and anarchists to achieve maximum exposure, and to advance his personal quest for notoriety. Combs had argued that Manning grew increasingly disturbed by the violence in Iraq and that his objective in copying secret documents while at a forward operating base there and leaked them to WikiLeaks was to spark a worldwide discussion. During the past 2 years of proceedings, Combs has portrayed Manning as both naive and well-intentioned. On February 3, 2010, Manning turned over a trove of documents that became known as the War Logs to WikiLeaks. He attached a note. This is possibly one of the most significant documents of our time, removing the fog of war and revealing the true nature of the 21st century asymmetric warfare. Have a good day. After that transmission, Manning developed a more robust relationship with WikiLeaks, passing on more than 700,000 documents and other material to the website, including video of an Apache helicopter engaged with the pilots believed were armed fighters in Baghdad. WikiLeaks called it collateral murder. 11 people were killed in the incident, including an unarmed Reuters news agency photographer and his driver. Manning developed an online relationship with a person believed to be Julian Assange, one of the founders of WikiLeaks. We conversed on a near daily basis and I felt we were developing a friendship, said Manning in a statement in March. The conversations covered many topics and I enjoyed the ability to talk about pretty much anything, and not just the publications that the WLO, WikiLeaks, was working on. Manning was arrested in Iraq in May of 2010 and transferred to the brig at Marine Corps Base Guantanamo in July of 2010. Now I want you to take note of this, because he was kept alone in a windowless 6-foot wide by 8-foot long cell 23 hours a day, and forced, while on suicide watch, to sleep in a suicide smock. In March of 2011, after 8 months of confinement, Manning quipped sarcastically that he could kill himself with the elastic of his underwear if he wanted to. Lynn ruled in January that any sentence that the Army private received should be reduced by 112 days because of his mistreatment in confinement. He was definitely mistreated. I would think once all this is done, the final verdict tomorrow, we're going to get more information about his mistreatment. Alright, bookmark my site. I'll keep you up to date. Please stay safe, and I'll talk to you later. God bless you.